story.
I'm your host, Anita Blanton, and I'll be with you through 4 p.m. There's plenty to get to talk about today, so let's go over some of the things that we have lined up for this first hour that we have here together. We're going to talk about podcast overtaking radio. We actually have, if you've been with us each day this week, you know it has been a very busy, jam-packed week. There's been a whole lot going on. So we anticipated getting to this conversation yesterday. We weren't able to because we were listening in to King Charles, and we had Governor Pritzker speaking yesterday during the 1 o'clock hour, so we had to move it to today. But if you weren't with us, essentially this conversation should not be a surprise to many of us, right? When was the last time you listened to AM or FM radio? I mean, most people, if you're listening to any radio these days, it'd be like Sirius radio or something like that. But most people are now listening to podcasts, not even maybe the music from radio, because you could download that, but podcasts. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind that and the numbers, what they're showing, what types of podcasts are really moving up the chain. We'll be able to get into all of those things shortly. Looking forward to that conversation. Obviously, the reason why we're even doing this type of show these days is because the numbers shifting. And so it's something that many of us see in one way or another, or listen to in some type of way, take in some type of way. And so we'll be able to get a little background information on that. Also, there's a species of fish that was introduced to it was native to the Pacific Ocean, but then it was unintentionally introduced to the Great Lakes in the 1950s. Well, it has really exploded in population in several areas. Some would say that's something to be celebrated, but others are not so happy about it. And in fact, we're going to be talking with a research fisheries biologist with NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, who's going to tell us a little bit about the pros and cons here and where we go from here. And also, we're really looking to see if some of the other species that we've talked about recently, like the carp, if what we're seeing with this particular species, this would be the pink salmon, if what we're seeing with the pink salmon is also relative to what we're seeing with some of the other species that we've talked about recently in terms of ebbs and flows that we are seeing in many areas. A few other things that we're monitoring at the moment. We are still watching for the Royals. Of course, yesterday, as I mentioned, we listened into King Charles as he spoke before a joint session of Congress, and a lot of people talking still about his speech. The president even, President Trump, remarked about it last night at the state dinner, jokingly saying that it may have been more well received from both Democrats and Republicans than even his State of the Union address. And of course, it was in the same holdings as it was for the State of the Union address. And so they had some jokes back and forth. The king even said last night at the state dinner that President Trump at one time made a joke about what things would have been like. Of course, they're here for the 250th anniversary. What things would have been like had it not been for that separation. And King Charles said, well, you'd still be speaking French. So they've had some good moments. Of course, the Royals today have been in Brooklyn. They took in the 9/11 memorial earlier today. We've been watching. We had some live pictures where you could see some of the security that was set up for their visit to New York City. And so we're still continuing to kind of monitor their steps along the way. Not sure if we still have that live picture for New York City. Okay, so you can see there, if you look at the top of the building there, you can see the security that's up even on the top, but then also down below as well. As you would imagine, there's quite the security protocol for this type of visit, especially after this past weekend's events that happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I'm sure it's probably been stepped up even more. So all of those things we're monitoring, we're looking at, we'll be going back to when we see them, but we also have Republicans right now in our state talking about the Safety Act. And this is coming after the major event that happened here in our area over the weekend, the shooting that took place at Endeavor Swedish Hospital. A man who was being taken there for evaluation after a crime by police ended up shooting and killing one officer and shooting and critically injuring the other officer. So there are new questions now that we've found out so much about his background and the long list of criminal charges that he was facing even before that day, and the time in and out of prison. Why was he out for this to happen? Republicans are calling for change right now. I believe that Representative Tony McCombie is speaking at the moment. Let's listen in. Okay. Okay. All right. So she has joined us following this meeting. So Representative McCombie, are you there?
I'm sorry. You think this was new with Zoom? Yes, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right. And I wasn't sure, were we joining you all Zoom? No, you're joining ours. We're here together. We spoke earlier today before you all had your meeting. Tell me, what you all wanted to get across in that meeting and why you decided this was a moment to bring this conversation to the forefront, because it's not a new complaint about the Safety Act.
No, absolutely not. Our caucus and as well as the Senate caucus have been fighting against the many flaws since the Safety Act came forward. And today, really having myself and Leader Curran, the leader in the Senate, having us, unified on this issue just shows the importance of it. We cannot have continued repeat offenders, especially repeat violent offenders, out within the community. So we filed legislation in the House. I filed HB 5757, and in the Senate, Leader Curran 4195. And this basically, as I stated earlier, was for those that are out on pretrial release with electronic monitors. If they were to have another felony while on pretrial release, that electronic monitoring is revoked, and they need to be held. That's a big concern. It's a flaw within the law that needs to be remedied very quickly. We have 4 weeks left. This can be fixed, and it certainly would be a step in the right direction.
Change, it feels like maybe imminent, but that doesn't mean that it's easy to do. And so in those 4 weeks, what do you expect to happen? What conversations need to be had? And how can we get to a bipartisan effort here?
Well, it could be very easy. The majority party has control of both houses. They could very easily call the bill, go through committees, have it heard. There would be bipartisan support. Unfortunately, in the House, we have an unwritten rule of the rule of 60, meaning 60 Democrats have to be on this. But I could foresee on HB 5757, you'd have 40 Republicans and possibly more than 20 Democrats on this. People in our communities around the state, this is not a partisan issue. They just have to call the bill, and it is within the power of the majority party to do so.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I mean, there are separate issues, but then one issue here when it comes to the Safety Act. The electronic monitoring, you mentioned just a moment ago. Obviously, the Safety Act was created for a purpose of equity, that people shouldn't be sitting and unable to move about pre-trial if they don't have the money. For instance, maybe a drug dealer could have the money to get out, but maybe it shouldn't be. So how have the judges been essentially handcuffed? I mean, why is it that a judge's discretion isn't adding up to what we're all wanting to see?
Yeah, we're not talking about in the Safety Act. I think was to target the low offense offenders, right? We're talking about
Right.
serious violent crimes. So it's a different conversation than what we're having right now today. I think the problem with the way the legislation is written, and I'm not an attorney, but it is how it is being interpreted. Words like reasonable, it's just unclear, and there should be clarity with our judges when they are having folks in front of them and have to decide their fate. But the Safety Act was they sold that to the public on, folks, might be a single mom who stole diapers for her baby. She can't afford bail. We're not talking about this. We're talking about violent offenders should be held. The policy should be written clearly so there is no discretion with the judges or no question from the judges on where we go.
Yeah, I think that is correct. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Let's see where things go from here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. 1:10 right now. We do have our Fox Business host, Edward Lawrence, who is on the line with us right now as we are awaiting another decision day, another announcement from the Fed. Thank you so much for your time. As we wait for the Fed chair, what are you thinking we might hear today?
Well, yeah, so the Fed chairman is going to talk obviously about his legacy. I'm sure he's going to be asked about that. He'll get a number of questions about what his future looks like. Now, the Federal Reserve, as you know, at the top of the hour, paused any interest rate cuts there. The Fed had 4 dissents related to that. Now, Stephen Myron, a board of director there, wanted to see a 1/4 point rate cut, and then 3 others on the Fed, Neil Kashkari, Beth Hammack, and Lori Logan, all wanted to see the easing bias in the statement changed. The statement is a little more towards the easing side, that there could be possibly rate cuts at towards the end of this year. The markets believe that's not going to happen, but that is what the Fed's disposition has been. And those 3 would like to see that easing bias move to maybe more neutral stance, that it go either way, either up or down related to this. But as far as the Fed chairman, we're going to hear from him in about 20 minutes or so, and he's most likely going to be asked questions about his legacy, talking about his future, as well as how the shocks, the supply oil shocks, are going to affect inflation going forward and the prices going forward. Anita?
Will this be his final meeting before his time as the Fed chair is over?
Yeah, and it looks that way. So today, Kevin Warsh, his nomination was confirmed out of committee. It has to go to the full Senate. That's going to happen sometime probably around the week of May 11th. So yes, it does appear that this is going to be the last news conference for the Federal Reserve Chairman as Fed Chairman. He does stay on as a Board of Governor if he chooses to through his term, which ends in the beginning of 2028.
Yeah, and then of course there's the question of whether any type of investigation will circle back around, even though that's kind of been in flux over the last couple of months and really the last few weeks especially. Edward Lawrence, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate it. Let's hear what the Fed chair has to say momentarily.
Yeah, thanks, Anita.
All right, take care. We always appreciate having you here. It's 1:13. I believe that President Trump is now with the Artemis II crew. Let's go to that live picture if we have it. Okay, all right, let's listen in.
They were in the Oval Office, and they walked in. They said, "Wow, the Oval Office! Everybody likes the Oval Office." Any questions, please?
President. Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, it's a great honor to meet all of you. Congratulations, and welcome to the White House. I have had the privilege of interviewing Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon.
Oh, good.
Is that what you would like to do? And Mr. President, do you think that will happen during your second term?
Well, we have a shot at it. I mean, we don't like to say definitely, because then you say, "Oh, we failed." Because I think we could say we're ahead of schedule. So we have a good shot. We've authorized it, and I think with this team and with Jared's done such an amazing job at NASA, I think we have a good shot, right? We'll see.
Yes, Mr. President, we have an achievable plan now back to the moon. And we're back in the business of launching moon rockets with frequency. So we just sent Artemis 2 around the moon. We're going to launch Artemis 3 in 2027. We'll protect for 2 opportunities in 2028 to return astronauts to the surface of the moon.
I like space. I started Space Force, as you very well know. It's been very, very important. And they tried to kill it. And actually, the military would not let the Biden administration kill it. They wanted to kill it. and it's going to turn out to be one of our most important things. I think it'll turn out to be one of the most important things they did. But we got involved with NASA bringing it back, and I was saying when I first looked at some of your facilities, they had grass growing on the runways right in between the cracks of the asphalt, and but not anymore. It's really strong. And you know what they do? One of the things they do that's so important is for our military offense and defense. And a lot of people say, well, is it worth it? It's really worth it, because what's happened militarily, you see what we're doing militarily, a lot of that comes from space. So it's been pretty great. Good question. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two questions for you. First, on the topic of space, do you have an update on the UFO files and when we're going to be seeing those?
Well, I think we're going to be releasing as much as we can in the near future. For some reason, and I guess it's just a reason that's been in the minds of people for a long time, that is such, they want to find out about the UFOs and anything having to do with UFO or related material, and we're going to be releasing a lot of things that we have, and I think some of it's going to be very interesting to people. I've interviewed people, my first term primarily, but I interviewed some pilots, very solid people, and they said they saw things that you wouldn't believe. So you're going to be reading about it. Yes.
Sir, you spoke to Vladimir Putin not too long ago. Did you talk to him
I
about
did today?
Did you talk to him about progress in the space area, and what else did you talk
I didn't talk about space. No, I talked about Ukraine, and I talked a little bit about Iran. I talked about a few different subjects, mostly about Ukraine, and we had a very good conversation. I think we're going to come up with a solution relatively quickly, I hope.
What does he want
I
to do?
think he'd like to see a solution, I can tell you, and that's good.
What involvement does he want to have in the Iran situation?
He told me he'd like to be involved with the enrichment if he can help us get it. I said I'd much rather have you be involved with ending the war with Ukraine. To me, that would be more important, because we're gonna have that. Look, we're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon, and we've knocked out their Navy, we've knocked out their Air Force, we've knocked out their anti-aircraft, everything, apparatus, everything they have, their radar, they have very little left. And they have some missiles, a small percentage. They have a small percentage of missile-making facilities. We knocked out about 80% of them. The rest could come very quickly if we don't make a deal. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They know it. And just about everybody else does. And so we talked about that a little bit. He doesn't want to see them have a nuclear weapon either. But I had a long talk with President Putin. I suggested a little bit of a ceasefire, and I think he might do that. He might announce something having to do with that. Did he announce it yet?
No, but I was wondering, I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, no, I asked him about, even if it's a little ceasefire, there's so many people being killed, it's so ridiculous.
Mr.
Thank you, Mr. President. In light of today's Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act, do you want Republican states in the South to look at redrawing congressional districts before
I
the
don't know, you have
midterms?
to tell me, when did the ruling come out? I've been with the astronauts. I've been with contractors, because we're trying to get the ballroom built
Yeah.
ahead of schedule. It's right on schedule. It's ahead of schedule now. I want to keep it
So
that
the ruling
way.
came out today.
And I was also with commissioning some people, but one of, David Warrington's son, I don't know, you know David, everybody knows David. He's got this incredible son, so he was just sworn in, so we had other things. Tell me about the what happened.
Well, some think that the ruling could create more Republican-held congressional seats in the South.
That's good.
Yeah, would you
That's the
want
kind
them
of ruling I like.
to- Would you want them to
When did
proceed?
that happen?
Well, the Supreme Court ruled on it this morning.
Really? Is that right? Tell me about the ruling.
Well, I have a question,
This is
Mr.
CNN
President.
fake news.
On your call with President Putin today, do you think the war in Iran ends first or the war in Ukraine?
Well, we talked more about the war in Ukraine, but he would like to be of help. I said, before you help me, I want to end your war. So we had a good talk. I've known him a long time. I think he was ready to make a deal a while ago. I think some people made it difficult for him to make a deal, but we talked more about Ukraine.
But which war do you think ends first?
That's an interesting question. Coming from you, that's very interesting. Which war would end first? I don't know. Maybe they're on a similar timetable. I think Ukraine, militarily, they're defeated, okay? You wouldn't know that by reading the fake news, but militarily. Look, their Navy. So they had 159 ships. Every ship is right now underwater. Typically, that's pretty good. What do you think, Jared? I mean, it's going to be hard for them to make a naval comeback. Okay, now they have an Air Force. Every one of their planes has been shot down or has been decimated. They have missiles. About 82% are gone. And they have drones, and most of them are gone. Most of the factories are mostly gone. And we have tremendous anti-drone equipment now, between lasers and that new, very special machine gun that knocks them out of the air like flies. And we use bullets instead of $1 million, missiles to knock out a $30,000 drone. So I would say Jared would tell me that with everything you just heard, typically we're in pretty good shape. And in addition, their economy is crashing. Their, as you know, their money, they call it their money, they don't have a name for it. Their money is valueless. They've got inflation that nobody's ever seen before. Other than that, I think they're doing quite well. If you read the New York Times, you'd say they're doing wonderfully because it's fake news. Or if you watch CNN, I mean, you cover it all the time. You think they're doing well. Do you think they're doing well where they have no Navy, no Air Force, no anti-aircraft apparatus, other than what they may have put there? They may have brought in some light stuff during the ceasefire, and we know exactly where it is, so it'll be knocked out within the first 15 minutes.
You're about to Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to go back to the Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act. I know you said you haven't seen it.
When did it come out? Just now?
No, it came out this morning, but basically very much narrows the Voting Rights Act.
Was it considered a win for who?
A win for Republicans.
I love it.
But my question...
This is a very good... We can end this news conference right now. I want to read it.
My question for you, Mr. President, is that some Republican governors have not responded in terms of what they're going to do. I guess early voting, for example, in Louisiana.
Republican governors? What?
Republican governors.
What about it?
Early voting begins Saturday there, for instance. Should they redraw the map in the next couple of
I would. I mean, it depends. I mean, some states don't need to redraw, and some do. I mean, I know what the concept of the ruling, I just haven't seen the result. Yeah, I would say generally I would think that they would want to do it. Some are greatly helped, and some, didn't make much difference. Yeah, I would say they would do that. They have time to do it. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of drama on the House floor today. Several bills were stalled, and a rule took 2 hours to pass today, and there's still some tension over the Farm Bill. Do you think that you need to get more involved legislatively on Capitol Hill?
Well, we want the Farm Bill. The Democrats don't. We want security, okay? We need security. We want security. The Democrats don't think we need security. They actually do, but they suffer greatly from Trump derangement syndrome, like at levels that nobody's ever seen. They're sick people. There's something wrong with them. They don't want to pay anybody for security. They don't like ICE. They don't like Border Patrol people. They don't like the people that keep us safe. When they ran this, they let 25 million people into our country, and many of those people were from prisons. They were from mental institutions, drug dealers, murderers. 11,888 murders, half of whom committed more than one murder. They think that was fine. I happen to like law enforcement. They essentially want to defund law enforcement, and I don't think the public's going to let them get away with it. We got it all approved in the great big beautiful bill, and they want to renegotiate. We don't like that.
Mr. President, the King's speech that he made to Congress, he spoke strongly, forcefully about the necessity for a strong NATO alliance. He also spoke about the necessity to continue to support Ukraine. Did his speech in any way change your thinking on either of those issues?
Well, you have to understand my thinking is, I think, exactly correct, but I was very disappointed with the fact that when we called on them to give us a little hand, we didn't need it. I actually did it just to see whether or not they'd be there. When we called on NATO to give us a hand with Ukraine, and in particular the most recent, we asked them to do certain things on Ukraine, and we also wanted them to do things with Iran. And on Ukraine, they're very much involved, but they didn't do things the way we would like to see it. It's been going on for a long time. And on Iran, they weren't there, as you know. You know it better than anybody. They weren't there. The king is fantastic. We spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of talk. We talked about this also. And he loves his country, and he's a great king, and he's a great friend of mine. And I think if he were doing that, if that were up to him, he would have probably helped us with Iran. He would have followed the suggestions we made with respect to Ukraine, because, you know, we have some disagreements on Ukraine, and not having to do with NATO so much as European countries. But no, he, you know, he's coming back tomorrow. We had an incredible evening last night, and he's leaving tomorrow. He's going to come back and see us before he leaves, and you know. But I think he's a phenomenal representative for his country. I think the people in the United Kingdom should be proud. I loved his speech yesterday. I watched it. I loved the speech last night. I don't know about my speech. I thought my speech was okay too, but I thought he was. I think he's an unbelievable king, and by the way, an unbelievable queen. They are a great couple.
This morning, you were talking about how busy you were this morning. James Comey was in court. He self-surrendered. He's now been charged a second time. This time over a social media post with seashells that said 8647. Do you really think that he was endangering your life or threatening your life with that?
Well, if anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill 'em. You know, you ever see the movies? 86 'em. The mobster says to one of his wonderful associates, 86 'em. That means kill 'em. It's. I think of it as a mob term. I don't know. People think of it as something having to do with disappearing, but the mob uses that term to say when they want to kill somebody, they say 86, the son of a gun. I'm trying to keep the language nice and clear. They don't use that term, son of a gun. They use another term. But that's a mob term for kill 'em. Yeah.
But do you really think your life was in danger?
Probably. I don't know. You know, based on what I'm seeing out there, yeah. The people like Comey have created tremendous danger, I think, for politicians and others. Comey is a dirty cop. He's a very dirty cop. He cheated on the elections. He tried to help Hillary Clinton, as you know. He dismissed a lot of things that he should have proceeded with. I wasn't involved, but he should have proceeded with. No, he's a dirty cop. He's a crooked man, yeah.
Mr. President, you just described there's been disagreement between the U.S.
Okay, we've been listening in. We didn't get to hear much of the Artemis II crew, but you can see they are standing there. President Trump here greeting them at the White House today. Of course, this was supposed to be more so a celebration of their flyby, the historic lunar flyby, and the White House's schedule has hosting NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen here for the next hour or so after their big trip here. So they will continue with this as it's really turned into more question and answer for the president at this point in time. Well, now he's kind of referencing the Artemis II crew as well, but he's been asked about so many different things. There are so many different topics that a lot of people are paying attention to. That final comment before we came back here was about former FBI Director James Comey. Of course, today he surrendered to authorities. He is appearing in court over the alleged threat against President Trump. There were the seashells that said 8647. President Trump took that as a threat. That 86 would be to kill a person, 47 he takes as the 47th president. So this is essentially a re-indictment of James Comey, but for a different purpose this time around, and with a new DOJ. Of course, the head of the DOJ, Pam Bondi, indicted him first last year, but all of that was dismissed, and so now we have a new indictment here for him in a North Carolina court. And so this latest indictment, it comes under Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who who has picked up this case. We'll see where it goes at this point. But he also, President Trump, also spoke a lot about a meeting or a phone call that he had with Vladimir Putin, Russian President Vladimir Putin. He said that he talked to him about Ukraine. He talked to him about Iran. He says that it seems like he wants to have some type of resolution with the Ukrainian war, but at the same time, that Vladimir Putin was very interested in helping the U.S. with enrichment in Iran. And so he was saying, well, I told him he needs to focus on Ukraine first. I'm sure there will be much more made of that conversation and those comments. He talked a lot about the Voting Rights Act. He was asked several times about the Voting Rights Act. That was a major bombshell this morning, first thing this morning, although the president says he hasn't had time to even take in that the Voting Rights Act decision was made, or a part of it was made with the Supreme Court first thing this morning, but they tossed out Louisiana's long contested congressional map. Obviously, there's been so much made of redistricting in many different states, and now there will be a question of what happens from here with this decision, because the Supreme Court said that it was unconstitutional gerrymandering in that decision that could have implications for, of course, this year's midterm election. You heard the reporter ask, well, would you tell other states now to go ahead and redistrict, to go ahead and redraw lines? And he said, if it were me, I would. But again, he hasn't looked over the decision. And so there was plenty for them to discuss, plenty of things for them to ask the president about, even asking him about the UFO files. He said they do anticipate releasing as much as possible in the very near future, which we have heard before, but maybe we are closer than ever to getting those files released. We shall see. We are going to take a quick break, though, here on the show. It's been a while, so let's take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to bring in our next guest. We have a research fisheries biologist with NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory on the line. Looking forward to that discussion after this. Welcome back, everyone. 1:33 right now. We have Joseph Langen, who is on the line, so that we can talk a little bit about the predicament of the peak salmon invasion. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So, you know, you would think if something was introduced maybe unintentionally to an area, to the Great Lakes after being in the Pacific Ocean, at this point in time, when we hear of it kind of exploding in population, that could be a good thing to some, but maybe not so much, you say?
Yeah, it really depends on your perspective, I think. Pink salmon have been in the Great Lakes for a long time, like you said, since 1956, and their populations have fluctuated over that period of time. Though recently they do appear to be increasing across all 5 Great Lakes, and we're not fully sure why. Now, one reason that this is worth looking into is recently in the Pacific, the species has become more abundant than they ever have in recorded records. And as a result of that really high abundance, they're competing with other species we care about, things like Chinook salmon, coho salmon, steelhead, species we also have in the Great Lakes. So in the Pacific, we're seeing lower survival and lower growth of those species. And so that's kind of one of the concerns here, if the species were to become highly abundant in the Great Lakes.
And is this the only species that we're seeing this kind of scenario with?
I wouldn't say it's the only species, but among the salmon and trout, it is unique, where the other species that were introduced, again, like the Chinook salmon or brown trout, are managed by fisheries agencies throughout the region. Whereas pink salmon were introduced by accident and have just been spreading and kind of doing their own thing since. And so they're increasing right now of their own accord for reasons we don't fully understand, because there hasn't been a lot of past research on them and they're not actively stocked like some of those other species.
And what do we mean when we say unintentionally or accidentally introduced? Like, what happened?
Yeah, so it's actually a pretty unique story. The province of Ontario was seeking to introduce pink salmon and another species of Pacific salmon, chum salmon, to Hudson Bay and James Bay, so up north, kind of outletting to the Arctic Ocean back in the 1950s. To do that, they needed to bring fertilized salmon eggs to a hatchery somewhat nearby. So they sourced pink salmon eggs from northern British Columbia, and they brought them to a hatchery in what is now Thunder Bay, Ontario, on the north shore of Lake Superior. Those eggs were to be raised up to little pink salmon that would then be ultimately released into Hudson Bay. As they were trying to do that and loading pink salmon onto the plane, they spilled some into the lake. Some also got mixed up in the hatchery with some lake trout and got planted. And then finally, when they were taking that last plane flight up north to Hudson Bay, they couldn't fit all of the pink salmon that were left in the hatchery on that plane. And so they flushed them out of the hatchery into a sewer that outletted to the Current River, which is a tributary of Lake Superior. At the time, they didn't think this species could survive in fresh water, so not much was thought of it. But then a few years later, Minnesota anglers started turning in these funny-looking salmon to fisheries scientists that were then identified as pink salmon, and they realized this species had successfully colonized.
They proved us wrong. Very interesting. And so you said that there hasn't been a lot of study as to, the current state of affairs. I mean, what do you think happens now? I mean, are studies starting to be done?
So that's really why we launched this work so far. A ton of work is going on in pink salmon, basically everywhere else they occur. As I mentioned, they're at an extremely high abundance level in the North Pacific and the subject of a lot of research. Due to ongoing warming, they're also one of the species invading the Arctic Ocean, which is an active area of research. They are also introduced to the North Atlantic by Russia throughout the 1950s to the 1990s, so the former Soviet Union, present-day Russia. And that population has been undergoing exponential growth over the past decade or so, with observed numbers increasing across Nordic nations by a factor of 50 between just 2017 and 2023. So this is a species of huge international research attention, but it hasn't been the focus in the Great Lakes because they're not one of those stocked species, and because for a long time they were in low abundance here. They don't grow as big as Chinook salmon or coho salmon, so they're not as popular with fishers. So folks kind of forgot about them or didn't really pay much attention to them here. But again, now that they're increasing in abundance and seeming to show up in rivers they haven't been seen in a long time throughout the region, folks are starting to pay more attention. And we wanted to launch this work to kind of put what's going on here in the Great Lakes in that broader global context of what's going on with this species.
Mm-hmm. And before I let you go, when we saw this, there were also questions from our newsroom about whether there were any lessons about the Asian carp.
I would say that there's some connections just in terms of broad how we think about invasive species. How do we take lessons from other ecosystems to learn, where might be habitable in our region. But pink salmon are really very different biologically than the invasive carps that are in, for example, the Mississippi River Basin. So in terms of just broad invasive species monitoring and how we think about, this kind of cross ecosystem pollination of knowledge, there's certainly some parallels there, but the biology is quite different between those two groups of species, so I wouldn't want to extrapolate too much.
Very interesting stuff. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Look forward to hearing more as you all learn more.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, take care. It's about 1:40, everyone. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is speaking at what is likely to be his final press conference as the Fed Chairman.
Trying to help or hurt any particular politician or political party. It's critical for the people that we serve. In terms of when I would leave, I will leave when I think it's appropriate to do so. Was that all your questions, or was there?
Well, I just have a follow-up, which is, what would you say to the criticism that by remaining on the board, you're actually taking a political act and denying President Trump the majority of the board, which as president he would have if you left?
I don't see that at all. As I mentioned, I'm literally staying because of the actions that have been taken. I had long planned to be retiring, and the things that have happened in the last 3 months have I think left me no choice but to stay until I see them through at least that long. In addition, I don't see how this will interfere. My intention is not to interfere. I was a governor for almost 6 years, and the tradition is at the Fed that governors who understand how difficult the role of chair is, and as a soon-to-be former chair, I do understand how hard it is to get consensus with 19 strong-minded people. You work with the chair. You try to be heard, but also collaborate with the chair and try to support the chair when you can. When you can't, you can't. And I think that's the attitude that people generally take, and that's the attitude that I'll take.
Nick.
Chair Powell, if I could ask about the inflation outlook. In March, you described the standard practice of looking through energy shocks as conditional on inflation expectations staying anchored. Since that meeting, there has been very little progress reopening key energy trade corridors. Can you help us understand how the inflation outlook has changed in the intermeeting period, beginning with the prospects for tariff pass-through resolving on the timeline that you had outlined in March, before getting to the energy shock that is now on top?
So, I would look at it this way. For a long time, we've been working on the hypothesis, really, that tariffs would lead to a one-time price increase and that would go away over time. In other words, that there would be no further change, so measured inflation wouldn't reflect that higher level going up more and more. And it's time for that to happen. We really do expect that to be happening in the next 2 quarters. So we'll be watching very carefully to see that what we've thought all along would happen. That's the kind of critical part of the forecast. We need to really see that. With energy, it's so hard to say. I mentioned, in sort of the textbook, you would look through an oil shock because they tend to be short-lived and they tend to revert, and monetary policy works with long and variable lags, so you wouldn't necessarily react right away. I think that is all the more true given that we're several years above 2% inflation and that we're already looking through the tariff shock. So I think we're going to be very cautious about that. But the question about looking through energy really is not in front of us right now. It hasn't even peaked yet. And I think we'd want to see the backside of that and progress on tariffs before we even thought about reducing rates.
So if I could follow up, the statement today preserves language that has taken on some meaning as it was socialized when the committee was actively lowering rates. Why is that easing bias still ripe, given how different the inflation outlook is now versus a meeting or two ago? And what more would have to happen for it to get evicted?
So that was, as you will recall, we had a discussion about that at the last meeting, and we talked about it in the press conference after the March meeting. We had the same today. We had quite a vigorous discussion about that very issue and the guidance, and is it still appropriate, and that kind of thing. And I would say that the number of people on the committee who either could support that language changing to a more neutral stance so that a hike is as likely as a cut, that number has increased over the intermeeting period, and it's easy to see why. I mean, it's a good question, right? You see inflation has moved up over the interim a bit. Core inflation's 3.2 now, moving, albeit just a little bit, in the wrong direction. And we know that there will be, that there's headline inflation coming out of the Gulf, and we don't know how much that will be. We're going to need to see. So it makes all the sense in the world that people would look at that and we'd have a vigorous discussion about that. You saw that 3 people dissented over the language. I think all of those people agreed with the rate decision. So the majority of the committee did not want to do that, and I didn't think we needed to do it at this meeting. It really was just a question of why do we need to do that now? We have so much to learn. There's so much uncertainty about the path ahead. There doesn't need to be any rush to make that decision now, because what happens in the next 30, 60 days, even by the next meeting, could really change the picture around that language. So, it's a much closer thing on the committee than it was in March, and that makes all the sense in the world, it seems to me.
So, Claire Jones, Financial Times. Just going back to this issue of the easing bias, we've now got oil approaching $120 a barrel when it comes to the benchmark Brent crude. If it stays around those levels 6 weeks from now, what would be your best guess as to whether the easing bias will still be in the statement? Thank you.
I wouldn't want to guess. Well, first of all, we're going to have new leadership in all likelihood by then, and new leadership's going to have a very important role to play in that. So I won't be standing here at this podium to answer your question. So I don't know. As I mentioned, that's all I can really say is that we had a great discussion about that today. It's gotten to be a better question in the interim period. We had the discussion. A majority are still on the page of not feeling the need to move to that level, and that's where I am. I get it, though. At a certain point, you would move, and that conceivably could come as soon as the next meeting.
Thank you. Just to follow on, the new leadership also seemed rather lukewarm on press conferences and on the dot plots. What would your advice to him be on these communication tools?
So I'm not going to give him any advice through you today here, but I think communications generally is. I think every incoming chair takes a look at communications, and it's a very healthy thing. I mean, communications it's very complex, and you can always be looking at new things. And if that happens, it feels like it's going to happen. That's a completely appropriate thing.
Neil. Hi, Chair Powell, Neil Irwin with Axios. Can you tell us if you've been in touch with incoming Chairman Warsh? To what extent is this a normal transition process versus all the things swirling around, something unusual, and what can we expect when he takes that podium in a few weeks?
I haven't seen him since seeing him at a dinner in January where I congratulated him and had a nice chat with him. Haven't seen him. I don't know what a normal process is. The last process was with Janet Yellen, with whom I had worked for 6 years, and so it was. We were sitting down the hall from each other, so it was a very different thing. I think this is and will be a very normal, standard kind of a transition process.
Okay, you heard there Federal Chairman Jerome Powell saying he hopes that this is a very run-of-the-mill transition process. Obviously, nothing has really been run-of-the-mill over the last several months, as he has been talking about really spending this time, which could be likely will be his last meeting as the Fed chairman, talking about the last several months and the legacy, as we are now hearing a little bit more about his plans forward. So yes, the governing body is holding the rates steady, and that is maybe the headline, but really the bulk of this conference has been about what happens to him next, where he goes from here, because there's been so much made over the last several months. The DOJ investigation into him, the announcement that Kevin Warsh would likely succeed him, but then Tom Tillis from North Carolina said he would hold up a vote on Kevin Warsh if the DOJ investigation into Jerome Powell wasn't put to bed, essentially. And so over the weekend, I believe on Sunday morning, Tom Tillis said that Senator Tom Tillis said that he believes that the DOJ investigation has been put to bed, that it's been dropped, that it is no longer going to kind of loom over this transition period, and that he is okay now helping to confirm Kevin Warsh. So we do expect that vote to happen very soon. There's still a question mark, though, and several Trump administration officials have been asked about it and haven't really pinned down an answer, quite honestly, as to whether that investigation will be picked back up later. But it seemed like Jerome Powell said that essentially is why he says he will leave when it's appropriate to do so. But it sounded in that conference like he may be staying on as a governor. That was another big question. What would he do after his time as the chair? I believe it expires, his time as the chairman of the board will expire on May 15th, but he does have the option to stay on as a governor, and he said that he will leave when it's appropriate to do so. So it sounds like he's staying on as a governor, at least for now. Question is, will that investigation by the DOJ come back around to him like it has come back around for James Comey, who we have seen so much of today, heard so much about today. So a few questions that are still looming there. Obviously, for everyone at home, the major thing, they are holding the interest rate steady, but just a lot of questions about Jerome Powell and where things go from here, where he is concerned. So we want to get to our next guest, who has been waiting. And again, I mentioned at the top of the hour that we actually thought we were going to have this conversation yesterday, so I don't want to hold it anymore. Laura Ivey, the Director of Research for Edison Research at SSRS, is here with us to talk a little bit about podcasts and what's going on with radio. Thank you for your time.
That's right. Thank you for having me. Always love to talk about this topic.
You know, I mean, some folks are probably celebrating this. It's kind of, we were having another conversation just a few moments ago about a totally different topic, and I think almost everything that some people are celebrating and some people are lamenting about it. So tell us about what you all have found when it comes to podcast overtaking radio.
Sure. So we'll put it all in context. The data that we're talking about from Edison Research is a daily listening diary that we use. This survey has been going on since 2014. We have trending data way back. So what we do is we measure Americans' audio consumption on a daily basis. And what we're measuring is really not just one source of audio, but all the sources of audio that people consume in a day. So that can be AM/FM radio, podcasts, satellite radio, music on YouTube, audiobooks, what else? Streaming music, so owned music. So these can be CDs, records that you listen to. So all these different sources that you listen to. We measure what you're listening to, where you're listening, on what device you're listening. And to be clear, what we're talking about here is just spoken word audio. So this does not take into account music listening. Radio's going strong. And frankly, radio is also delivering very well for sports and news. Really where podcasts have taken the reins is with spoken word, and particularly with programming that focuses on personalities and talk. So that is what we're talking about when we're saying Americans spend more time with podcasts when we're talking about that spoken word audio than they do with AM/FM radio.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, and it seems like kind of unsurprising given what we see and what many of us consume on a daily basis.
Sure. You know, in thinking about, first of all, that on-demand culture of listening, right? So if you look at podcasts, one thing that the product Share of Ear does is it looks at, again, the whole day. So if you look at the entire day when Americans listen to audio, and you think about how much audio we're consuming, it's about 4 hours, which is pretty remarkable. When we started doing this survey in 2014, it was over 4 hours. And now we have all these video options as well. We spend a ton of time on our phones. We watch live streams of things. We consume videos. We are still listening to around 4 hours of audio programming a day. So that's pretty remarkable. Audio is an incredibly resilient thing that we partake in as a society. So if you look at that 4 hours, on a daily basis, AM/FM radio reaches about 57% of the population. So people are still listening to radio. We won't understate that. We want to make sure that people know radio still reaches about 60% of the population on a daily basis. Again, what we're talking about, though, is this one segment of spoken word. So when you look at the time that we spend with that spoken word, which is about a quarter of all of our daily listening, when you look at that time spent with spoken word, that's where we see podcasts excel. And so daily now, podcasts account for about 40% of that listening, and about 39% of that listening is with AM/FM radio. So it just surpassed.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about is really where we do that listening. So if you were in your car, you're a lot more likely to listen to radio. If you are in your home, you're a lot more likely to, that is where your podcasts are being consumed. People are listening to podcasts in the home, whereas they're choosing radio to listen to in cars.
You know, and you said, well, radio's not going away, but let's talk about the impact. I mean, it does cause things to change and to shift and to morph over time when you get data like this.
Sure. You know, what's funny is if we think about talk radio and even when podcasts came on the scene, you know, Serial was released in 2014, and we look at a talk medium, there was an assumption that this was going to be older people. Older people listen to talk programming, they're engaged in political talk and so forth. And what we've really seen is an entire new industry emerge with, personalities, right? We see celebrities that have been born from podcast culture, and podcast culture is huge. And we're seeing a ton of new listeners come to spoken word, listening through podcasts. So, yes, radio is resilient. We're listening to radio, we're listening to it in cars, but there are many audio choices. So people are listening digitally. You can now listen to AM/FM radio digitally, but we're seeing the device change as well, right? So now we can listen, mobile phones become a listening device, smart speakers. We have infotainment systems in our cars. So obviously there has been a change in our audio diet over the years.
Yeah.
We're listening to streaming, we're listening to different things. Absolutely.
Yeah. And where do you all go with your research? Like, what do you look at next? And how do you maybe take this data and then use it moving forward?
Great question. So we've seen the emergence, we've tracked the emergence of devices as they've been used to capture audio. We've tracked the emergence of some of these sources, right? So YouTube many years ago was just seen as a place you watch cat videos. Today it's seen as a real audio, it's a real audio source. We listen to free playlists. We, engage with finding that audio. So where we go is we look at our historical data, and we're looking at the trajectory, and we're looking for the next thing. So what's going to emerge as our next thing? We would not have guessed maybe that internet connected TV devices would be a thing. And now we are listening to audio from the televisions in the centers of our homes. So the people who use this data, investment firms, broadcast companies, streaming services, multimedia companies, there's really an appetite for what is happening in the audio landscape in the U.S.
And it's ever changing.
Absolutely. Yes. We're looking forward to tracking it for many more years.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it. When we talk about things that are ever changing, you just never know what the next course of discussion or what the next direction for the whole industry will be.
That's right. We will see. It may not have been invented yet, and we might not be able to guess, but we will be watching for sure.
There you go. Thank you. Wonderful having a conversation with you.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. It's 1:58 right now. Perry, is the DOJ conference happening? Okay. All right. So it looks like just a picture opportunity that's happening, not a full press conference. So we'll go ahead and take a quick break. Oh, there are the Royals again. They're making their trip around New York City today. Let's take a 2-minute break, and we'll gear up for the 2 o'clock hour. Welcome back, everyone. 2 o'clock right now. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in our second hour here on Chicago Live for today. So we have several things that are planned. Obviously, when things pop up, maybe in terms of live events, we'll try to go to those as well. But we have an interesting conversation on a Lewis and Clark book. That's about all I'm going to say at the moment about that, but look for that around 2:45. 2:30, another one of the conversations we had to move from yesterday over to today as we've been taking opportunities to hear from King Charles. We didn't get to our planned conversation yesterday about bad bridges in the state, and I believe that this new study shows that 100 out of over 600 bridges in our state are listed in poor condition. So we absolutely want to hear more about that, not just about the state of what's happening in our state, but how do we get those 100 bridges repaired? I mean, what financially does that look like? What does it look like in terms of time? You know, we always say there's winter and then construction season. Does this happen? Any progress happen within one construction season? We'll talk all about that as well. And we'll also talk about school enrollment numbers. Not a really good outlook there, picture that we're seeing as of right now, but we'll kind of talk about where we are and where we're going with that as well. But our first conversation is with State Representative Amy Murray Briel from Ottawa. And, she passed an extension to Sammy's Law earlier this month, and looking forward to now speaking a little bit more about what happens from here with this. Thank you so much for your time.
Anita, thank you so much for having me. I am really excited about this law, and I think it's going to open the world up for countless families and individuals with disabilities. Mm-hmm. So Sammy's Law was passed in 2024, and it was limited to the new rest areas developed by the Illinois Department of Transportation, and that was to have an adult changing station in those facilities. There was also a part that said there would be an adult changing station in the Capitol. So I was approached by a wonderful woman named Courtney Carlson and her son Theo, who has issues where he is not able to utilize the bathroom, and he's 85 pounds. Mm-hmm. And she reached out to me and asked if there was a way that maybe we could expand this. And I know, having been in rural areas and understanding old buildings, that retrofitting is not going to be able to happen. Yeah. So we kind of started and we started from that perspective, and we worked together to figure out what a really good path would be to increase accessibility for individuals and their families with disabilities, and decrease costs, and bring dignity and understanding to a whole new world. So we decided on a new development of 40,000 square feet or more that will house up to 1,500 individuals. Wow. We'll have to have one adult changing station in an ADA compliant handicap stall, which alleviated a lot of the concern and questions about space and being able to do it. And just so folks know, when we talk about an adult changing station, we don't just mean, like seniors. Many children have significant disabilities, from cerebral palsy, like Representative Laha's daughter, who co-sponsored this bill with me, Presley, to having spinal atrophy issues like Theo and Courtney, or having, like my friend Marcella's, her son Brandon, who is significantly autistic. And all of them need a place to be able to help them change after a bathroom incident without being embarrassed, without being mortified. And the standard tables don't bear that weight. So that's what we mean by that when we talk about that.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the dignity of it all, and I think you painted a very clear picture as to the challenges that it could face, and honestly, quite honestly, the things that a lot of people would just overlook and not understand the significance and the importance of, unless you hear those types of stories.
I will say that I've had more folks reach out and talk about how they're teens. They have to lay them down on a dirty bathroom floor or in front of people coming in and going out, or if some families are lucky enough to have a van or a hatchback, they have to do it in there. My friend Shella has a 20-year-old son who, like I had mentioned, and they don't get to go places. So imagine if she knew that somewhere on the museum campus there was a place where she could take Brandon and be able to change Brandon. They could continue and explore the world. And like Courtney brought up, for schools, right, she has other sons and they play sports. She can never take Theo because she doesn't know if there's going to be a place where she'll have access to being able to change him. So he misses out on that. And so when I talk about a world expanding, we're talking about even people who aren't disabled, but understanding of that world.
Yeah.
And it's really impactful, I believe.
Well, you're certainly bringing greater understanding by raising this. So you have had this pass on the House floor. Now it's heading for the Senate. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And are you expecting the same type of reception there? I mean, this seems like it should be universally received, but I'm sure that maybe a part of the hesitation for some would be the cost.
You're right. And I can understand that is, we have two things with the cost that I want to point out. And that was, first, actually, cost wasn't as much of an issue when we were negotiating this as it was space. We were both reading one word and me having different meanings, and that word was room. The changing station can very easily fit in an ADA compliant bathroom, and so it wasn't that it needed a separate room, right? Words are so very important. They can change everything. And I think getting past that, the small amount is $10,000 for the top line high-end machine when it goes into effect 3 years from now. If anyone has ever built anything, you know that the rock they put in around the landscaping costs $6, $7, $8 million. $10,000 for dignity and expansion compared to riprap around the sidewalk, I think is a small investment. But we do understand that there will be places that might struggle. And so the state of Ohio has this program that they've implemented, and they have found private funding sources, as well as utilize some of the state legislation to get a dedicated funding source so that they could expand this. And that's definitely something I promised Representative Laha that we'd look into, to be able to offer options for organizations to do this.
And so in bringing up Representative Laha, this has become a bipartisan effort.
Absolutely, it has, yes.
That's beautiful to see, and very rare.
You know, you're right. It is too rare, and far too often we have a lot more in common than people want to admit. And I have to say, Representative Laha was incredibly brave crossing the aisle on this. She told her caucus this is something that was important to her. She told me she'd vote for it, and then after thinking about it, she said, I'm going to sponsor it because it means that much.
Wow.
And that took a lot of bravery. And to me, wherever bravery comes from, it should be celebrated, and I appreciate her work on this.
Well, that is a really beautiful standpoint, and again, it's a beautiful thing to see when people can cross aisles both directions and get something done for people who need it. And in this case, in some instances, people who could not maybe advocate for themselves.
You are so right. It's a world that's really challenging. I'm autistic and have ADHD and anxiety. So trifecta here. I fall into the disability community. I have 3 sons who are also same, almost all grown, a husband. I live in the disability world, I think, maybe because I just know folks who struggle with things. And when we look at it, our world was never created for minds like ours or bodies like others. And the limitations are really only put in place by what society says we can and can't do. And I'm glad to be able to bring some attention to that. And even though none of my children need bathroom assistance, I still know this is something that needs to happen for everyone out there who does.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate the representation that you provide, and again, the effort that's happening here. So then I would expect, because now it's moving to the Senate, you would possibly know something by the end of May in this legislative session, or do you think that it's going to take longer?
I think that I have talked to a senator already, and she, I believe, is going to pick up the bill. I'm not sure if she's done that or not. We're reaching out to her office, but I think it's going to go through this session. I know that I've reached out to the governor's office, and they support the bill. So if it gets through this Senate the way it should, with minimal, if any, adjustments, because we've added, we've manage the expectations of everyone, from school districts who were very concerned it could be massively financially impactful to small business associations. So hopefully the work that we did in the House will be able to just go right over to the Senate, and the senator will be able to pass it through. So fingers crossed. It never works that way, but we can try and hope, right?
Well, it's not for a worthy effort or cause. So thank you so much for coming on the show to help raise awareness.
Thank you for having me. It was
Absolutely.
delightful.
Great speaking to you, and please keep us updated.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Everyone, it's
Bye-bye.
2:12 right now. Give us 2 minutes, and we're going to be back. I'll let you know about some of the headlines, the stories that are trending on our website right now, and we'll kind of move on from there. Welcome back, everyone. It's just about 2:15. Let me tell you about a few things that are populating on our website before we get to our next conversation here. I do believe that our next guest is on the line. We've had a story that we have been on since yesterday. We got word of a major indictment and charges that were coming down for several offenders. Last month, we brought you to a home in Winnetka where there was a home invasion, and since that time the federal agents and prosecutors have been putting together their case, and now we have 7 a total of 7 offenders who have been charged with this home invasion. It sounds simple, except there are so many details to this. From the indictment, when we got the initial indictment, I was reading through and I was just like, whoa, 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 to now some of them having a day in court. And also reading into a little bit more of, okay, we see government names in here. One of those names is actually tied to a pretty well-known Chicago rapper. I mean, you see the government name, you don't know that it's this rapper Lil Zay Osama. We had actually spoken to him. One of our crews spoke to him just a couple of months ago. There was a young woman and her children who were bullied and severely beaten on their way to, or I think it was on their way home from school one day. She was with her children, taking them home from school, I believe. And there was a group of kids that kind of came from every direction and beat this woman and her children that day. And this rapper, Lil Zay Osama, said he wanted to help them out. He wanted to really help them recover from that horrifying situation. But now his name is in this document, charged along with 6 others now, because they made another arrest since yesterday when we got the initial indictment there for this home invasion in Winnetka. And again, the details are just kind of jaw-dropping here. Prosecutors say that there was someone who posed as a delivery worker, a pizza delivery worker, forced their way inside, held the victim captive while demanding valuables and even cryptocurrency access. Everyone who's been arrested has now pleaded not guilty, but they face very serious federal charges with the possibility of life in prison. So obviously we're going to continue to follow that very big story. Also, we had 19 people arrested in a major fentanyl gun ring takedown in Northwest Indiana. There's been a lot going on that we're still connecting the dots on for that particular case. Authorities, though, dismantling this multi-state ring, drug trafficking, supplying fentanyl pills, illegal firearms from Detroit to Northwest Indiana. And you just wonder where everything went from there. But they've arrested 19 people. Federal convictions. Investigators seized 23,000 fentanyl pills here, more than $10,000 in cash, multiple firearms. They called this Operation Motown Blues, obviously because it started in Detroit, but that's a whole nother situation. Key members received prison sentences ranging from 30 to 270 months, and officials say that the operation significantly disrupted the flow of drugs and guns into the region. Should we all hope that that is correct, that they've gotten a lot of drugs and guns off of the streets. And then obviously we are continuing to follow up on the big story from over the weekend, which was the shooting and killing of one Chicago police officer, Officer Bartholomew, John Bartholomew, and the critically injuring of a second officer. We're still getting in more information. The man charged in those officers' shootings, again, the murder and attempted murder of another officer, has now been charged in a separate case, or excuse me, not charged. The separate case has been continued to June 2nd. And so Alfonso Talley, 27 years old, multiple offenses here. And the more information we get, the more questions come from all over. So at this point, we've heard from the Cook County State's Attorney really going in on the electronic monitoring system, why we have a system that allows for someone who was already facing very serious felony charges to be out for even this type of situation, murder, to happen. There's also been several Republicans today who have held a press conference, and they want to, both in the House and the Senate, bring back up bills that would revise the Safety Act. And so lots of questions still coming from this as he goes through not just one set of charges for the murder and attempted murder that happened over the weekend as the police were taking him in for an evaluation at the hospital, but the charges he was already facing before that even happened. So there's a lot on our website. We're always updating these stories, so you can find them at fox32chicago.com. Those will be, of course, updated on the air as well in our later shows. But let's move on to our next conversation here on Chicago Live. We have Krista Kaput with Bellwether, who is here with me now, so that we can discuss what is going on with enrollment for our K through 12 schools. And it's a little troubling. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So let's go into what you all found. I said it's troubling, but let's give a better picture of it.
Yeah, so at Bellwether, we do a lot of work on K-12 education. And so when we look at K-12 enrollment, we're seeing that the biggest driver in the decline in enrollment is birth rates, right? So birth rates have continuously fallen since 2008, coinciding with the Great Recession. And so, you have fewer students or fewer babies that are being born, that leads to fewer children. And so in the Chicago area, the Chicago Public Schools has seen a decline in about 100,000 students over the last decade, which, again, fewer students means less funding, less services for students. So that's the big issue, is the birth rates. Another big issue is interstate migration. So when people leave the state to go to another state. And Illinois has the third largest loss in individuals over the last decade of people who are leaving the state to go to another state. So those are the two big issues that impact schools, and that impacts children getting funding to then get services and whatnot in those schools.
Very interesting. And what is the period of time that you all looked at this happening?
Yeah, so for the birth rates, we've looked at between 2013 and then 2023, which is the most recent year of national data that's available.
And so you said we're the third. Who's above us in terms of states with declining enrollment?
Yeah, so in terms of the declining enrollment, you're third in terms of individuals who are leaving the state to go.
That's really what I wanted to know.
Sorry, yeah, behind New York and California, right? So it's kind of more of those high-cost states that we're seeing across the country. And also of note, California, New York, and Illinois have the first, second, and fourth largest school districts in the country, right? So when you see those families leave and people leave, those impacts, New York public schools, LA, and then Chicago public schools greatly, because you're seeing those rapid declines in those areas. And then families are going to lower cost states. So states like Texas, Florida, and the Carolinas have seen larger increases.
So does that mean they're getting more federal dollars? Has it hit us in terms of federal dollars yet, or is that kind of coming down the pike because of what we're seeing?
Yeah, so it's interesting, the funding conversation, because the federal government provides a very small amount of funding. On average across the country, it's about 10%. And the federal government provides funding for who are student with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students with Title I, and then multilingual learners. So actually what we're seeing in several states is that while their overall populations are declining, in terms of federal dollars, we're seeing an increase of student disabilities, multi-learners, and economically disadvantaged students. What's more troubling is that when you have fewer students, right, states tend to fund on a per student basis. And so when you see a decline in students, then you get less state funding. And so then districts have to either cut programs or consolidate or maybe close schools to kind of offset that gap, or they have to try to raise more local dollars through raising property taxes in order to fill it.
And you wonder about the trickle, I don't know if it would be a trickle down effect, trickle up effect, maybe for this, but have colleges felt this yet?
Yeah, so colleges are already feeling this. And so again, when you have fewer students, right? So the students who were born in the 2007, 2008 era that coincide with our birth rate declines, right? They're going to college right now. And so we've seen the shrinking of the domestic pipeline of students who are going to college domestically. And then with that, we also are seeing then fewer international students coming in to kind of fill that. And so we know from national data that in the fall of 2025, new international student enrollment dropped by 17%, and then it had already dropped. So we bring and then decline international. There's fewer students who are going to college, and so colleges have to, like K-12 schools, they have to cut their budgets, consolidate, or try to find new ways to get like maybe adult learners or other students. And this problem is pretty acute in Illinois. While collectively, the Illinois public school system has seen an increase in students that's really driven by the flagship institutions. Regional institutions have seen pretty drastic declines over the last 20 years. So like Chicago State University has seen a decline over the last 20 years by 65% in their higher education, Western Illinois 60%, Eastern Illinois 35%. So universities, like I said, like UIC, the flagships, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign have seen increases, but most of the regional institutions have seen a decline.
So do you think we're in a lull and this will just swing back at some point in time? Or do you think that, say, the pandemic has just drastically shifted things to a point where we're probably not going back to old enrollment rates because people just see things differently as well?
Yeah, so it's a kind of multifaceted, right? So these declines in like birth rates seem to be pretty permanent, right? We're seeing these permanent declines. And while the pandemic definitely accelerated some of the contributing factors to decline, like people choosing other options or leaving the state for like remote work or whatnot, the declining enrollment issue has been around for about 20 years. It's just that, public schools, K-12 and higher ed, they couldn't ignore it anymore because of the pandemic. So I think this is here to stay. And then to your second point about kind of like what are people thinking, maybe like skepticism or whatnot, there are students who are, rethinking, is it worth it to go to college, right? So there are financial barriers. There was a survey put out by Lumina Gallup survey that surveyed students who have either never enrolled or they left college. And 50% of them cited rising tuition costs, a fear of debt and return on investment. And then you're also seeing really strong alternative pathways. So, programs, apprenticeship programs, things like that for electricians, plumbers, HVAC is growing. But I mean, the data are pretty clear that having a four-year degree does still, on average, lead to increased lifetime earnings, increased weekly earnings. It's just that, the type of degree it does tend to matter.
And, whatever hits larger institutions seems to hit like HBCUs twice as hard. Some of them are going under at this point in time. But you mentioned like Chicago State. It's not an HBCU, but it is predominantly black. And they actually are starting to bring some things to fruition. They just got a football program and full athletic staff. They're really bringing some things instead of taking things away at this moment.
Yeah, I do think that schools are trying to figure out ways to attract students, right? To attract students to their schools, because with students you get tuition, you get state funding, things like that. And so I do think colleges are trying to be creative and thinking of ways that they can attract students and prove that like their programs do lead to better life outcomes for them, and attract individuals to come and help try to revamp their enrollment.
Yeah. It's hard to see, especially some of the schools that we love, having issues. But there, like you said, it is a multifaceted thing that all institutions, K through 12, and these higher institutions of higher learning are having to deal with. It's just a different world we're living in. So very multifaceted in terms of what they're dealing with. Thank you so much for your time and for your research.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right. Take care. It's about 2:30, everyone. Give us 2 minutes. We'll be back. Welcome back, everyone. It's about 2:32 right now, and we're getting ready for our next conversation. Before we get to it, just want to take a couple of pictures of the royals. They are separate, the king and queen at the moment. King Charles, they're both in New York City. King Charles has been kind of just greeting people along this route here. Royals, they're just like us, right? No. He's been greeting people who have been coming out to see. He was with a crowd of children just a moment ago and helping them feed chickens in the area. So, of course, he is a long-standing advocate for the environment, and they have a long list of things that they're going to be doing while they are here for their 4-day trip to the United States. As he is doing this, Queen Camilla is attending a celebration of the United States and the United Kingdom's shared love of literature. And you can see Jenna Bush, who is there. Of course, her grandmother was a big advocate, grandmother and mother, both big advocates for reading. So thus it would make sense that she is maybe the MC for this particular event there for Queen Camilla. She's standing off to the side. We had a good picture of her a moment ago. Yes, the royals kind of just touring about. They have had quite the active day and 2 days. So we'll see where they go from here. They have still a long schedule, and President Trump says at some point in time he would like for them to circle back with him. So I'm sure everyone would love to see them one more time. But we'll see what's on their schedule as things progress. Let's talk a little bit about, as you see him getting into a car, let's talk about the bridges in our state. Back here in Illinois, if we have over 600 bridges in our state, 601, new research shows 100 of them to be in poor condition. We have Dr. Allison Black, who is a chief economist with the ARTBA, joining me now, the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Pleased to be here.
So I know, I can't ask you about every single bridge in the state. We don't have time for all of that. But give us a bigger picture. I mean, when people hear, 601 bridges, 100 in poor condition, is this normal across the country?
Yeah, so it's a little bit higher than normal, but what we found every year, we do a comprehensive bridge report based on bridge inspections of every bridge across the country, and it gives us some really good insight into some of those conditions, so people can really understand the needs of the infrastructure system, what repairs need to be made, and nationwide, about 1 in every 3 bridges needs some sort of repair work. So that could be everything from replacing a bridge to making some more minor improvements, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's been a lot of progress, certainly in every state. State DOTs are really trying to work on this issue, local governments, but there is a lot of work that still needs to be done.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because there's pain with progress, especially when it comes to fixing bridges. I mean, we saw, a couple of bridges here that were in need of repair just a few months ago, but the traffic snarls that it caused, that was a lot.
Yeah, there is definitely, there is some pain while the construction activity is going on, but in the long run, as these bridges are improved, things will be safer for the traveling public. You'll have things, hopefully, like as road conditions and bridge conditions are better, you don't have cars, hitting a pothole and having to go get a tire fix. So the other thing is people can get where they want to go faster and in a safer way. So hopefully those benefits, but there's definitely some construction activity that goes on during that time that people have to adjust to. But those are also good paying jobs and helping the local economy as well as that work is going on.
It's a great way of looking at it. Very important facts there as well. So when we say poor condition, is that like, at risk of imminent disaster? Or like you think about the Key Bridge, are we looking at something where if something were to hit it or connect with it, that there would be a really big problem? Or that, like, what's the level that comes to poor?
Yeah, that's a great question and really important. So when a bridge is classified in poor condition, it means that during the inspection process, one of the key elements of the bridge, usually that's the deck that you're traveling over, that you're driving over, it could be the substructure, the part of the bridge underneath, or the superstructure for some bridges where they do have that top part, where one of those elements on a scale of 1 to 9 is rated what's considered poor or worse condition. So it doesn't mean there is an imminent danger to the traveling public. State DOTs will close bridges, or they'll take measures if the public is in danger. But what it does mean is that there are elements of that bridge that need to be fixed.
And what is a reasonable outlook in terms of how long these types of issues take to be repaired?
That's the thing, is that investments are made. So bridge projects are, contractors are out there working on them as the state DOT awards those projects. And then it does take a while often for some of those repairs to happen. And then what we start to see is the next time the bridge is inspected, usually that's every 2 years for most bridges, we start to see that improvement. And that's one reason nationwide we see this gradual improvement just in terms of the number of bridges that are considered to be in poor condition. It doesn't happen overnight, but we do see that slow and steady progress. And a number of states, including Illinois, are really trying to make these investments. So I think over time, over the next few years, you'll start to see some of these metrics on the back end improve. And you'll see it in your daily commute, in your daily life, as those orange cones are out there and those improvements are being made.
How do they prioritize the improvements? Because I'm sure anyone who hears that they're that they often travel over one of the 100 bridges that's in poor condition would say, fix it now. So how do they prioritize?
So that's a decision by the state DOT for the state bridges. And then often a number of these bridges that are also have challenging conditions may be local bridges. So especially in rural areas, the care of those bridges can often be part of the local transportation departments and communities. So it really depends on who owns the bridge. But often, they base on a variety of different factors. So each state is unique in how they undertake that list of priorities.
And how often is it that a bridge is in disrepair?
So we've seen, we always have bridges that upon inspection maybe fall into that poor category, but then you also have bridges that as they're being fixed are either in good or fair condition. They kind of move up in those rankings. So there's always projects kind of flowing on that list, but over time, we're definitely seeing that number go down nationwide, which I think just reflects the dedication of state governments to really, and the public, the traveling public who supports these investments to really try and make some of these needed repairs.
Mm-hmm. Are there states, is there a region where you find more bridge work needing to be done than others?
Yeah, there are a combination of things that can impact that. So for some states, you have what we would think of as very much a legacy infrastructure. They have bridges that have been, that are 50, 60, 70 years old that may need repairs. So that can be a factor, as well as weather. That can often take a toll on structures. If you have an area where there's a lot of snow, a lot of rain, different factors that can impact those bridge conditions over time. So all of those things can go into different conditions.
Very interesting. And I mean, that's really Illinois, since we get everything here, sometimes in a weekend, but on a repeated basis. So it obviously becomes challenging for, I'm sure, timing of doing the repairs too. How is that thought process? We joke about winter and then construction season, but I think about even the last week, temperature-wise, maybe they could have gotten out there, but we've had storms. So how does that even factor into things?
Yeah, weather can definitely be a factor for some states, depending on the weather. There are certain times of the year where you can really go out, get that paving work done, get that repair work done, do concrete repair. So it really does depend on the weather. And like you said, if there are really bad rainstorms, that does impact what work can be done in a given day. So all of, construction crews are out there navigating all of these factors every day. And trying to do the best job they can to make those improvements for the public.
So how would you reassure people when they're hearing 1 in 6 bridges in poor condition that anything would change those numbers anytime soon?
Yeah, so I would encourage people, the state and local governments are absolutely inspecting, repairing, working on the infrastructure that needs to be repaired. So you're not in imminent danger to cross these structures, but it's important to be aware of the improvements that need to be made. It's kind of like when you think about owning a home. You have to make repairs and continue to make upgrades and improve the infrastructure. If you get a little hole in your roof, it's easier to fix it right away and work on maintaining that structure rather than letting it just deteriorate. So, every state is different, but most states, these improvements are funded through taxpayer dollars, whether it's a motor fuels tax, other related user fees, and investment. So it's important to make those investments and to keep investing to improve that infrastructure and try and keep things from getting to that point.
Before I let you go, is there a state that's like the shining star for infrastructure, that they've just done a wonderful job with it?
Yeah, we tend to see sometimes, states that maybe perhaps are in a warmer weather climate don't quite have the same challenges as some of the states with the weather issues. So therefore, it's a little bit easier to maintain some of those structures. So that definitely can be a factor.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. It's just about 2:45, everyone. Give us 2 minutes before we go to break here. Kind of looking at one of the live pictures that popped up. Okay, this is Queen Camilla, as she has been at the event for literature and now just greeting some of the Anna Wintour. Look, and you know what comes out this week? This is interesting timing that we're seeing this, right? Devil Wears Prada 2. It's getting ready to come out again. I believe it's either today or tomorrow. So it's interesting that she would be with Anna Wintour, but and the Met Gala is coming up too, which is all Anna Wintour's big party. But just moments that we're getting of the royals as they are out and about and attending several events here in the United States, marking the 250th anniversary for the nation and really reinforcing the allyship between the two nations. So we're going to continue when we see little pockets of joy like this right here to try to bring them to you live. But let's take a quick break, 2 minutes, and we're back. right, welcome back, everyone. It's 2:47 right now, and we were just talking about America's 250th anniversary, and so it'll be a time when you hear a lot about history. But our next guest is taking a moment to really look into revisionist history. And he's joining me now. Craig Fairman, who is an author, is with us at the moment. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
So tell us about your book.
Sure. My book is called This Vast Enterprise, A New History of Lewis and Clark. And I think Lewis and Clark is one of those stories we remember from high school or even elementary school. It's a classic American story. But what I tried to do is write a new book that really puts you in the canoe, that makes you feel what it was like to be alive, how hard these people worked. And it's important to say how hard all of these people worked. Lewis and Clark are great people and a big part of this book, but I tried to really dig into what was Sacagawea's life like? What was the working class soldiers like? What about York, the black and enslaved man who was on the expedition too? So I tried to make this kind of an ensemble and still a page turner at the same time.
So take me through maybe each one of those in summary.
Sure. So let's start with Sacagawea. She's somebody that we probably heard out. There's more statues of her than anybody else, any other woman in North America. But I think we think about her as a myth too much. And I try to remember what she was like as a human being, as a mother. She had a really hard background. She was enslaved and really treated very poorly by fur traders and other people. But when she met Lewis and Clark, she realized if I help these guys, they can help me. And I think Lewis and Clark deserve some credit for that, but Sacagawea deserves the credit too. She was working really hard. She was a great guide. She was very smart, and she was able to get herself and her infant son safely back to her people.
So do you think that we are getting more of an accurate portrayal from you, or is this the revision of the revision, or is this righting historical wrongs?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of all of the above. I think it's more accurate because this expedition always involved a lot of people. The title of my book, This Vast Enterprise, that's a line from Clark's letter to Jefferson. So Jefferson knew and Clark knew that it took a lot of people to get this expedition over the finish line. But I think too often we just focus on the people on the top. And I want to say, hey, there were lots of people. There were those white working class soldiers. There was York. There was Sacagawea. Something this big and impressive could only work if a lot of people worked together. And I tried to tell a story that captured everybody's contributions.
Okay, what was another myth that you dived into?
Well, I think York is a really great example here. He was an enslaved man who sort of took care of Clark, and he was on the whole expedition. He went all 8,000 miles too. But I really tried to focus on what York was able to accomplish as an explorer himself. I found these new documents that showed York was one of the most important people for surviving the Whitewater Rapids they had to deal with. This might seem crazy to us today, but a lot of people on the expedition couldn't swim, which, they're on a river. They should be able to swim, but times were different back then. York was a great swimmer, and so he was essential in helping them get their canoes through some of the worst water. He was not just an enslaved person, he was somebody who was a great explorer himself.
When you were looking at these accounts, what is going through your mind in terms of what you knew before learning these other representations of the people that are the people behind the stories you had already heard?
Sure. I kept thinking again, I spent 5 years working on this book, and I kept thinking, I only know half of this story. Like, I know about Lewis and Clark, I know about Jefferson, I know about the Louisiana Purchase, but there were all these other people who were helping them, and then there were people on the other side of these interactions. I did a lot of work with Native people. I interviewed Native people today, and then also worked hard in archives to find new documents, because Lewis and Clark weren't going into this empty area. There were already people there who had lots of power, people who were really strategic. And so I kind of feel like the school version of Lewis and Clark is like Breaking Bad with just Walter White. And I'm like, well, let's get Gus in there. Let's get Jesse in there. Let's show that there's this really complicated world. And again, it's more accurate, but it's also a better story.
Better story. Do you think that that the old stories were told to allow people to remain comfortable with not knowing some of the things?
I think that's exactly right. And it's not just about some of these other voices too. Like Lewis is a great example. We know that Meriwether Lewis ended up killing himself a couple years after the expedition. And I think too often the old stories sort of just try to focus on him being a hero and then not say anything else. But I really tried to dig into his mental health. I didn't take today's concepts and apply it back then. What I did was try to understand him the way that he understood himself. And if you read his journals closely, you can see, he was aware that he struggled with what we would call anxiety today or depression. And he tried to stand up to that. I think that's heroic. He didn't always succeed, but he tried. And so I just tried to get that human element in this book wherever I could.
Tell us why you feel this book is needed now.
Well, I think you said it yourself in the intro. It's America's 250th, and the Lewis and Clark expedition is one of the best stories to understand sort of what makes America strong, but also what some of the problems that America brings too. You have all of it in this story. You have slavery, you have Americans eyeing native land, but you also have regular Americans like the soldiers who are doing the hard work, sacrificing for their country, for their patriotic beliefs. So America is a complicated place. This expedition was a complicated mission. I think this is a page-turning story that can show us, what we love about our country and also what we, wish might be otherwise.
Complicated for sure, and you're releasing it at a time when there's, lots of discussions about book bans.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so I hope I tried to write a book that was for everybody and that was really grounded in the facts. So there are a lot of notes in this book. You can read the book and just sort of enjoy the story. But I tried to make sure that people understood, this is where I'm getting my information from, because I'm not trying to write a book that's settling arguments in our current time. I don't think historians' job is to say, here's a hero, here's a villain. I'm just trying to tell you what life was like in 1804, and then you as a reader can make your decision.
Were you concerned, though, that some people don't want the facts?
Yeah, but I mean, I can't control how people will react to it. I sound like my therapist here, right? But my goal was to just give the facts and be as accurate as possible. And the neat thing here is that the facts are so exciting that I think people from all walks of life will find something that they care about. You can read this book and love Lewis. You can read this book and love York. You can be like me and find things to admire in both of them. But either way, this is just a big all-American story that I've tried to tell as accurately as possible for the first time.
And what comes next? I mean, do you do part 2? Do you move on to, the myths and, the stories from American history? You could do 1,000,000 books, but
sure.
What do you go to next?
Well, I think whatever book I decide to write next, I'm going to keep focused on human beings, because those to me are the most interesting subjects at all. And you've talked a lot about myths, and I agree with you. Those myths flatten what make us human, right? Like people back in the past, they had all kinds of different beliefs, just like people today do. So my job is to try to understand how each person saw the world. So whatever I write next, I hope there's a human being right at the center of it, because I think human beings are the most fascinating subject of all.
When you spend a lot of time, and you said 5 years, working on a book of the past, does it make you see our present or future differently?
I think it does, and it actually makes me more hopeful, because it's so easy today to see Lewis and Clark as inevitable, right? Like, well, of course they made it to the ocean and back, because that's the story we hear in school. But when I wrote this book, I really tried to, like I said, put you in the canoe. And so each day when Lewis and Clark woke up, they didn't know what was going to happen next. They didn't know if something amazing was going to happen or if a grizzly bear was going to try to chase them down. Even when they got back to America after their expedition, one of the first questions they asked is, who's the president? Because they didn't know if Jefferson had won election or not. So I think it's encouraging to know that even people in the past who accomplished great things, every day they woke up and they were like, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. All I can do is do my best. And so I try to take that lesson to our lives today. We don't know what the future holds, but we do know we can try to stand up for what we believe in.
And do you think that is the message you want people to take from your book?
Yeah, I think so. I think to take that America has always been a really complicated place, that even in this American story, Native people really mattered. An enslaved man like York really mattered. A woman like Sacagawea. They all contributed. Lewis and Clark contributed too. So I hope people realize that this story has always been a very diverse and fascinating story, but also it's a story of hard work and sacrifice, and we're capable of that today too.
Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find the book? And it looks like you're going on a tour?
I'm on a tour right now, but they can find this book everywhere, online, at your local independent bookstore. Chicago has so many of those, but you can find it all over the place, and I hope you pick up a copy. It's a fun read.
Good plug for the independent bookstores. They all need our help. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, have a great day. Thanks.
All right, same to you. It's 2:57, everyone. Give us 2 minutes and we're going to be back. I'll line up where we're going in our final hour together here for Chicago Live today. Welcome back, everyone. We're now in our final hour here of Chicago Live for the day. Thanks so much for everyone who has stayed with us since 1 o'clock when we started our discussions here. And if you just joined in, there's plenty more to come. We anticipate, before turning you over to the 4 o'clock news, hearing from Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, responding to the latest ruling from the Supreme Court today that will really have a lot of implications when it comes to redistricting throughout the country for states, and then the midterm elections, and quite possibly on the Voting Rights Act moving forward. We're going to discuss all of those things and more with her coming up around 3:45. We'll be getting an update on our weather, even as we have been in here for our show today. I mean, when we got up here, it was pretty dark outside. I'm like, is it going to rain again? And now the sun is shining. But you do see people in jackets. So we've got a lot to talk about with JD Rudd as well, about our weather outside, what we're experiencing at the moment, and of course, where we are going from here, because we've been all over the place just within the last 48 hours even. We'll have that discussion as well. Looking forward to a conversation about a harder topic that has really just had the eyes of the state and honestly the nation on it. We lost a Chicago police officer over the weekend, and we're going to hear a little bit more about some of the fallout that's coming from that, as well as a case about a Winnetka home invasion. As we get more information about that particular case, it's gone in a lot of different directions most people didn't anticipate. And so we're going to bring in a guest that really has maybe had his pulse on everything since the very beginning. We'll introduce him very soon. But our first discussion here is also a head scratcher. And this is about the water in Cahokia Heights. So we have Adam Mahoney. He is a climate and environment reporter at Capital B. Really appreciate you making time for us today.
Thanks for having me.
Give me a little background on Cahokia Heights. I think we maybe need to start with that.
Yeah, so Cahokia Heights is a small town near East St. Louis in southern Illinois that is a majority Black town, which in 2018 was actually deemed the poorest town in all of America. The per capita income, the median per capita income is around $18,000. But over the last 35 years, the residents there have been experiencing a deep and intense sewage crisis. Basically, every time it rains, the town floods, and there's been, because of a lack of investment into sewage infrastructure and wastewater infrastructure, those floodwaters mix and combine with sewage overflows, which then have led to tens of thousands of dollars in damages across the city for residents who are struggling just to pay their everyday bills. There has been elements of federal investment and state investment over the last 4 decades, but the crisis has not been solved yet.
So yeah, investment-wise, and we talk about disinvested communities on a regular basis, but dealing with something like this, what are they hearing when they've brought up, the residents there, when they've brought up their concerns about this despicable, quite honestly, situation that their water is in?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of residents that I spoke to have felt like their pleas for help and support have been ignored over the last several decades. Like I said, I mean, the Illinois State Environmental Protection Agency has documented the crisis since at least 1993, and the federal EPA has documented a larger sewage crisis in East St. Louis since the late 80s. So this is something that both the federal and the state government has known about for decades. There has been elements of funding. Cahokia Heights is actually currently under a consent decree with the federal EPA and the federal Department of Justice, which is requiring them to bring their wastewater treatment system up to code so that sewage does not continue to seep into people's homes, and recently has been found to have actually seeped into drinking water sources across the town. But ultimately, because the town lacks they lack a tax base, right? So they don't have the internal funding to fix this crisis, and they have not received enough money from both state and federal agencies to fix the crisis.
What are the health stories that you're hearing? I mean, when you talk about sewage seeping into water, I mean, that's way worse than even seeping into your home, but into your water system. What are the health stories that you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, there's been several studies that have shown that, there was one that was in 2022 and 2023 where they tested 50 residents to trace bacterial infections, and 30 of those 50 residents had tested positive for active bacterial infections that are most commonly found in the global south and not in developed countries. I've spoken to Yvette Lyles, who's a 67-year-old retiree who has had to have surgery because of bacterial infections, who is at a greater risk for cancer and stomach cancer. But the overall health impact of living with the immediate impacts of racism via environmental and health systems is the fact that the life expectancy in Cahokia Heights is less than 68 years, which compared to the national average of 79 years is a stark difference. So we're seeing it impact people and their life outcomes.
And of course, because of the income level there, it's not like people can just pack up and move.
Yeah, exactly. And as we see across the country and in disinvested communities, that also equals a low value of properties, right? So even if you wanted to sell your home, you actually couldn't afford to move anywhere else and purchase a new home. And it is an older population. So these are folks that, don't have the economic resources, but also don't really have the physical support to make such a drastic change. And they're people who want to stay in their community, right? A lot of people were born and raised in Cahokia Heights and don't want to be forced from their home because of an issue that is out of their control.
Sure. As we're talking about this, the images from Flint, the stories from Flint are just circulating back in my head. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, there's a deeper Flint connection as well. So earlier this year, Equity Legal Services, which is a local law firm, partnered with some scientists that helped uncover the Flint water crisis to test the tap water of several homes across the town. And they found that there were traces of E. coli and other bacteria related to human waste found in the drinking water, and they've brought those test results to the local water company, the Illinois American Water Company, and to the state EPA, who the water company has basically said that they don't trust those test results, and that according to their own test results, the water meets federal standards, while the state Environmental Protection Agency has come in and said they're willing to test the same homes to kind of double check the test results uncovered by scientists related to the Flint water crisis.
Well, I mean, people said that the residents of Flint were being essentially gaslit for many years before the entire controversy just unfolded before everyone's eyes. Some people were held accountable for that situation. Some were not. And what do you expect from raising awareness about what's going on in Cahokia Heights? I mean, what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, if we were to compare it to Flint, right, the water crisis there and the infrastructure upgrades did not happen until it was brought to the national level, and it really forced the hand of the federal government to support that community. Ultimately, that is what residents told me they would hope to happen in Cahokia Heights, is that this does reach the desk of the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. But we are under a current administration that has cut funding through the Clean Water Act to upgrade infrastructure in poor rural communities. That was first outlined under the Biden administration. So we're seeing an administration that is not prioritizing towns like Cahokia Heights. So it feels like folks are stuck in a place where they're not going to get support. They feel like they're not going to get support from the federal government, in addition to living in a place where, just quite frankly, the city does not have the resources to offer them the support that they need.
And who are their representatives? And who is for sure you are championing their cause by just helping us to know what is happening there. But who are their representatives that are pushing for change there?
Yeah, I mean, so at least at the city level, the mayor and the city administrator, they do have an active relationship with the state EPA, and have called for support. But it's just I mean, it does feel like, at least in residents' eyes, that at every level there's been acknowledgement, but there's not an agency or an elected official that has kind of taken responsibility. And residents told me that it does feel like, no one cares as a result of that, which has, created both the physical health impacts, right, because of the water crisis, but also the mental health impacts of feeling like they're living in a place that is being explicitly neglected.
It's so sad. It really is, and it shouldn't be. They shouldn't be enduring what they are enduring, but it is very sad to hear about all of this and to not quite know when a solution will come about. Where do you go with your reporting from here?
Yeah, I mean, so I've actually been reporting on the crisis since 2021, and have been, documenting the changes both at the federal and state level. But what comes next is, residents there are attempting to organize their neighbors so that more people can have their homes tested. And the goal is basically to collect as much information as possible so that it cannot be, disputed at the elected official level. In addition to, the next steps for them in trying to get national recognition for the crisis that they're going through.
Yeah, well, please keep us updated. Great reporting thus far. I mean, many of us have learned some new things today from your reporting. So we appreciate what you've done already, getting the word out for those folks there in Cahokia Heights. And please continue to be a sounding board for them there and, a clarion call for the rest of us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and uplifting the reporting.
Absolutely. Take care. It is just about 3:15, everyone. So we're going to take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to bring in our next guest. So stand by. .316 right now, everyone, and as you saw in our last conversation about the water in Cahokia Heights, many of the stories that we report on are multi-layered. And the more digging you do into it, the more information that comes out. We pull on different sources to help us understand what it is that we are getting word of. And for sure, that has happened in another case, Winnetka. We had a home invasion there last month, and we sent crews to the scene. You see the crime scene tape up. You hear that a man has been held up in his home. And initially that was really all we knew. As the police and the prosecutors started to put together their case, though, it was silent for a while. From a larger standpoint, it was silent for a while until yesterday. They dropped an indictment, and it really just kind of blew our minds. But again, was very multi-layered. You're reading government names, not quite understanding the larger implications of the names that we were seeing. One of those names led us to understand that he was a pretty well-known Chicago rapper, Lil Zay Osama. So we've called in someone who just goes by Trenches News, who may have had more information about this particular case than we even, again, as we're trying to put the pieces together of the puzzle. Trenches News is here with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
How you guys doing? Thank you for inviting me.
I want people to understand why you do your updates with a mask on.
The mask thing is like a reverse psychology. If I'm doing something positive and the guys with the mask doing something negative, they see me getting money and elevating their life. Hopefully they'll switch over to we don't want to do this no more. We want to wear the mask for this purpose,
So when you're doing your updates, and thousands of people are watching, and you heard about this Lil Zay Osama how?
Well, I follow all the news. I heard about it last month too, but didn't know that Lil Zay was involved. I'm actually shocked that he was involved, not his homies, but him, because, he portrayed like I got money, everybody else is broke online, but look like the youth being fooled again,
And when you say being fooled, we, again, trying to connect the dots, I knew I had heard of his name before, but it took a moment before one of our reporters said, wait, we just talked to him when he was helping out a family in need not too long ago.
Yeah, he had helped out a woman who was attacked by some kids, and sometimes people help out just to get in the public eye when they knowing that they doing wrong, to suppress the things that they doing behind closed doors, So that's why I never take any of these guys serious.
And it's a shame. So you were pretty shocked, because we have heard positive things about him, that this was actually happening as well. He was one of 7 people now that have been charged in this home invasion in Winnetka. What did you learn about what went down?
They said the guys used uniform such as like a DoorDash or some type of uniform to gain entry, to lure the person awareness. And I seen a lot of this in the news lately, where people are wearing UPS drivers suits and other suits that you will let your guards down and then you'll be robbed. So to everybody out there, you got to pay attention, and you got to live life off other people's mistakes, and so they gained entry, and the guys, they went in there and basically terrorized the people, the innocent civilians, for their things that they work hard for.
Mm-hmm. So when you saw the video out of Winnetka, did you already kind of know what was happening, or you were getting updates and then kind of putting it together as we were working to get updates as well?
Yeah, see, with the streets, it's kind of different. Like, being in the streets, some people who be around them, or they might have robbed, did a home invasion and went back somewhere, and once they get in a tour with somebody, they'll inbox me and leak it. Oh, they part of this robbery, or they did this, they did that. And then when they come out, I'll be like, dang, they told me this like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So that's how I be getting my information. When a party get mad at each other, they inbox me for it and expose it.
So that said, I mean, you're wearing a mask, but people know who you are and what you do.
Yep. People know who I am. I'm from Chicago. It's just you know, I watched the drill scene, you know, kill off everybody. Like front row seats, I was there. Like watching kids lay on the ground shot. And you know, it's just time to change. Can't nobody beat the streets. Even I had to learn, you know, going to jail and other things. But you'll never be able to beat the streets, and the streets don't love you. And everybody that's in the streets, they're around each other for a motive. Whether you have a car, whether you have drugs, whether you have somewhere for them to chill for at, it's all a motive.
And so now we find Lil Zay Osama intertwined in this entire scheme for this robbery. Did you hear why they chose that particular house?
No, I didn't hear why they chose that particular house, but I can guarantee to you how fast the feds got on it and the crime was solved is most likely the person who sent them there, the one who gave them up. Because these guys are like uneducated. They don't know anything about cryptocurrency and all that type of stuff. So it has to be something bigger than them, somebody bigger than them who sent them to do it, and then probably told on them or felt bad or they put it together. Like, how did they know where I live at? You know, you don't just go to no random house, even if you do a dashing. You got to know that this for sure the house that somebody provided the information.
Are you ever concerned about retribution for what you do?
No, I ain't concerned. I was in the streets. I know what come with everything, and no, I ain't scared. I don't worry or none of that. It's about saving these kids. The kids are getting younger and younger, killing. Like it's 12, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds that's scaring grown people, and it shouldn't be allowed. Like when I was growing up, at least the gang members have enough respect to tell us to go to school and, you know, y'all can't be around here when we doing our thing or whatever. They have respect. Now it's like the parents are playing friends with the kids and they're out here just killing people, and they killing innocent people, and that ain't allowed. Women, children, elderly, like the neutrons, like civilians, they off limits. They shouldn't be terrorized or anything, you know. So I'm prepared for whatever.
How do you tell kids, though, to leave it behind if that's what they're seeing and that's what they're growing up around?
See, all the kids from, I'm gonna speak for Chicago. They, you know, it's instant gratification. Everybody want to hit the jackpot, or you see one person make one song and then he blow up, and now everybody want to be a rapper. That's why it's different lanes for everybody. Like you just gotta find your niche and then, you know, pursue it. Rapping's not for everybody. Like school ain't for everybody. Some people succeed in trades more than school, you know. And I just want to speak on one thing about speaking of the schools and the youth. A parent that's single, like a single mother parent, can only do so much, like in a household without a male in the house. So you trusting that your kids go to school for 7 hours, 7 hours, you know, and that they gonna be, you know, that during that time it will be some type of, you know, you learning and stuff like that. The schools are bringing the drill rappers to the school. Like that's crazy. And they rapping about dead people in they raps while they performing in these schools. I don't understand it. I don't get it, but it takes a village to stop all this. And if we got the schools hiring the drill rappers to do it, if we got the mayor saying that the city's safe when it's not safe, we're in trouble.
So
we're in some big trouble. So
do you think that the educators know the lyrics?
The educators know that.
Go ahead.
Yes, the educators know the lyrics. These teachers are getting younger and younger. If you see, they getting younger. When my teachers was around, they was older. These teachers are younger. Like they coming straight out of college to being a teacher, and they know that I see them in the hallways dancing to the music. It's unacceptable. Like for real, for anybody who rapping drill music, killing, they shouldn't be allowed in a high school or elementary school or no school, period.
So how do you see your future?
My future is gonna be bright and brighter. I do eventually, like when I get enough money, build more trade schools. Cause one thing about school, you can go to school forever and still not have employment. But if you learn the trade, HVAC, drywall, construction, carpentry, you can always have a trade. You can be your own boss, and you can start getting your own contracts and everything, and eat for the rest of your life. So that's what I want to do. Get
Well,
more trade schools around the world, cause it ain't with the other system that's going on with the schools. It ain't working at all.
Well, I wish you the absolute best in the future, and I appreciate your positive outlook on things, and I hope that it does impact a lot of people. Why do you think people watch Trenches News?
They get the real raw, unedited. It's like you guys report, but it's only certain things that you guys will know from the scene, because people, like, I don't want to talk or anything. Like when something happened, people inbox me immediately, like, and tell me the story. Send me the audio if they was there. They'll send me the whole recording, the video, and it's just raw. It's just raw when and I talk up for the kids. I talk up for the women. I talk up for the elderly. Innocent people shouldn't be getting touched at all. Shouldn't have a fear in this world, because they the ones who own the houses that the gang members standing in front of. And I learned that, and I know that me doing this is right. I don't care what nobody else think about me. I know doing what I'm doing is right. So I thank you guys. You can go and get my book on Amazon. Survive How I Survive, Chicago Drill, Trenches News. I appreciate you, Fox 32.
Thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, it's 3:28. Let's take a 2-minute break. We'll be back. everyone, and JD Rudd is upstairs to give us an update on what is happening with our weather outside. I was saying to our folks who are watching that, when I came upstairs at 1 o'clock, it was dark. All of a sudden, the sun was shining bright, and people were walking around, yes, with jackets, and now it's dark
Back to being dark again.
Yeah. What's going on?
This is the ebb and the flow of things. We have these little spotty showers, very light, trying to move across the area. So, of course, with showers, you have to have clouds. So, when the clouds come over, we block the sun out for a little bit. Showers pass by, clouds break apart, sun comes back. So, this is the nuance of weather forecasting, because not everybody is getting the showers.
Yeah.
So, some areas are doing just fine. Others are saying, it's raining. But not everybody's going to get rain today. So, it's one of those, it's difficult in the overall sense of things, but most folks understand a chance of a shower means there's a chance for a shower. Not everyone's going to get it. That's kind of where we are.
And where are the areas that will be getting them or have already gotten them?
It's going to be varied, and the semi-polite but very descriptive way I could put it is, imagine somebody sneezing on the radar.
Oh, that's not polite.
And it's borderline, but it gives you the idea. It's like, it's not everywhere. It's just little splotches here and there. It's just a sneeze on the radar, and it's very light too. So it's not torrential downpour or anything else like that, but it's spotty here and there. So we've seen it mainly on the Illinois side of things right now. I think we'll see it on the Indiana side of life later on this afternoon, and then we could see more showers as we head into tomorrow. Very similar setup moving into Thursday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
With more scattered?
Just more scattered to spotty, if not isolated. There are some folks who won't see a single drop of rain today. Others who might get a shower after another shower going, what's going on here? So it's going to vary quite a bit.
Okay, and it's not feeling much like May is coming this way.
No, and that's the other story. If you don't get the shower today, congratulations, but you probably will get the cooler air. Temperatures have been in the 50s in most cases, lakefront of the 40s, and that's not going to change the next few days. You see the 7-day forecast. I've got 56 for tomorrow. But keep in mind, that's going to be at O'Hare. And if you're closer to the lakefront, you can chop about 6 to 8 degrees off those numbers. If you're farther inland, you can add maybe 3 to 5 to that value. So maybe close to 60. And then Friday's the cool day, start to finish. I mean, in the morning hours, 30s, we might see some frost in some backyards.
Wow.
Best we can do for a high temperature is 52, so hello May. And then over the weekend, we start the weekend, there might be widespread frost Saturday morning. I mean, 36, that's for O'Hare. Outlying areas easily 34, 33, 32 degrees, a high of 55. And then we start to turn things back through the direction for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But to touch more on that cool factor for a second, I did some stat digging. No records being set here, and it's not uncommon for us to see temperatures at the freezing point as late as the 25th of May.
Ooh.
So we still have a few weeks where this window is open for it to be chilly. I don't think that's going to be the case, but we shouldn't be terribly surprised by this because it does happen regularly.
Oh man, the 25th. I mean, being in jackets through May, yes, that's Chicago. That's it can happen, but freeze.
But I think here's the thing. We got so spoiled here in the month of April. We had so many days that were 70 or better, which is uncommon. Average high right now is around 64 to 65. Just a week ago, the average high was 62. So most of April is supposed to be in the upper 50s to lower 60s.
Yeah.
Not all the 70s and the 4 days of 80s that we saw. So we got spoiled by some early warmth, and now we kind of hit this little downward slide. People go, what's happening? We're making up for all those warmer days that we had. The atmosphere, like we talked yesterday, always likes to balance itself. So we had some warm, now we have some cool to get that balance.
Yeah, and so the rain that you talked about the scattered showers, are we kind of in the clear for like strong storms for a while?
Yeah, for a while. I don't see any of that coming our way. It's just light showers tomorrow. Maybe next week a small chance for just some light showers as it looks right now. It's the give and the take of things. To get the stronger storms, you need heating. You need warm air. So if we're not going to be warm, it holds down the threat for severe weather. So there again is that give and that take of what do you want? Do you want it warm with a chance of storms, or a little bit cool and no storms to deal with?
We're Goldilocks. You didn't know that?
It's kind of in the middle, not too warm, not too cool. It's that sweet little spot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we did see severe weather in several parts of the country. Seen some of the video, and it's just astounding.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's jaw-dropping, but it is that time of the year. mid-April all the way through the end of May is prime severe weather season across the central part of the U.S. So areas like Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, even down to Texas, Louisiana, those areas get hit hard. Even southern Illinois starts to see some of that. As we get more into late May and June, that shifts more northward, which then puts it in our backyard. So we've had our share of some stronger storms with that early season warmth, but we haven't hit the prime stride of severe weather season yet. That is still to come. So don't let your guard down just yet.
Yeah, I mean, essentially the rounds that we have had, hopefully they serve as preparation, you know. Yeah.
Just to be prepared, be ready to go, make sure your phones are charged up, have a way to get alerts. And I mean, it's not a bad idea to have some supplies to keep in a storm shelter just in case. And I know something my own family realized: when the power goes out, you got to have a way to keep some things powered. Like we've been battling sump pump issues. We went 8 hours the other day with no power in our house, and so my wife's like, well, "What do we do? What do we do?" It's like, yeah, we need to get something on this sump pump to keep that water. It's something you don't think about until you're in that moment, and you go, "Oh, great! Now what?" So good idea to be preemptive as we hit severe season.
Absolutely, good information there. Anything else that you're kind of tracking out there? That, I mean, you know, as we kind of look outside and we see people just getting in their pictures at the bean and taking it all in, and many of them visitors, of course, or people who live here taking their visitors over.
That's right, taking the visitors out and about. The good thing that I'm seeing no major strong wind. I know a lot of times we're usually battling the wind. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'll be breezy from time to time, but not a stout wind over the next few days. The only trade-off is it is a north, if at times northeast wind, coming in off of Lake Michigan. Lake waters are still very cool, so if you are out of the bean, if you are taking a trip to Navy Pier, going somewhere, whatever it is, yourself, the relatives, the family, friends in town, just keep in mind the closer you are to that larger body of water, the more layers you might need. Cool.
The wind itself caused issues for people this week.
Yes, the strong wind behind that storm system from a couple of days ago knocked down trees, knocked down power. It was a mess in some cases. So all of us need just a few days here to catch that breath, dry things up, get power restored, get things fixed up. So we're going to get that. I mean, like I say, a few showers here and there, and fine, you got to put a jacket on and go back to wearing jeans. Not the worst case, especially if your legs look like mine. You need a little more sun on those things before you're ready to get things out and about. So, I mean, I get it. We'll get there all in due time.
And for the folks who, like along the Fox River, you know, places that really have been inundated with water over the last few weeks, is this going to be a stretch that gives them time to kind of come back to some?
This is going to help tremendously. It's not an overnight light switch that just you turn it off and the water's gone. Day by day, though, we'll see those levels recede more and more, and the less we have of rain, obviously, the better. What we could use is some sunshine, because that sun helps to dry the moisture up out of the ground. Once the ground is dry, that gives water more places to go. But with the cloud cover and the cooler air, it's harder to dry that ground out, so you may still have some standing water, especially up against the banks of those rivers, creeks, streams.
Okay. JD, thank you so much for coming up. We appreciate it. We'll see you coming up in the 4 o'clock news.
Works for me.
All right, everybody, give us 2 minutes and we'll be back. Welcome back, everyone. 3:43 right now, and early this morning, the Supreme Court struck down a decision limiting the reach of the Voting Rights Act. This had to do with a case out of Louisiana, and it really sets up the questions in terms of congressional redistricting and what the map will look like even going into the midterm elections. I have Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, who is Zooming in with us right now to give us some response. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And so, as I said, this came down first thing this morning. You are working toward higher office right now. As somebody who is on a campaign trail, does this give you pause that there could be some redistricting going on in midterms?
Well, first of all, let me just say that the decision that was made today is one of the most disastrous decisions made by one of the most disastrous Supreme Courts in American history. And this is an example of this Supreme Court unilaterally stripping away Black political power, unilaterally working to strip away the Black vote, and really doing everything they can to advance Donald Trump's authoritarian agenda. And I can say that we've already seen Republicans doing this in Florida, and this is a time that we need to point out exactly what is happening, and we need to keep all options on the table to make sure that we do the work to make sure that everyone's voice can be heard at the ballot box. That's what a democracy is built on.
And I would ask you, there are going to be questions about, Democrats will say, oh, the Republicans are doing it. Republicans are saying, oh, the Democrats are trying to do it. A Republican would point to Virginia and their redistricting vote that has happened there, or California and their redistricting vote that has taken place there. A Democrat would point to, yes, what's going on in Florida, or to Texas, but where does it stop?
Well, first of all, we need to see that Republicans are making the decision to end gerrymandering. I mean, until they support doing that, then we're going to keep seeing what's happening. And I don't think that it's up to Democrats to now unilaterally disarm. I've always said that as we watch Republicans sort of make their power grabs, and as they try to continue this work that they're doing, that all options must remain on the table. It's why when I'm running for United States Senate, one of the things that I've said is a priority of mine is getting to Washington, D.C. to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That's what's important. But as long as Republicans are using their power to take away Black votes, to dilute Black political power, we certainly have to make sure that we keep all options on the table to fight back against this.
What do you say to those who point to the state of Illinois, though, and the map here in our state?
Well, like I said before, we have to make sure that we keep all options on the table. I think about Illinoisans here who deserve to have their voices heard. I even think about my own personal story of my father, who marched 61 years ago from Selma to Montgomery to protest voting rights discrimination. And with this decision, this court is rolling back 6 decades of progress. And so I think about the fact that I'm running for office, I'm running as a Black woman, and I am seeing right before my very eyes something that my father marched to prevent 6 decades ago. And here we are still fighting these same battles. So I know that we've had competitive elections, and we need to make sure, as the governor has already stated in talking to experts, our maps are constitutional. And so we're going to continue doing everything we can to make sure people's voices can be heard at the ballot box.
Mm-hmm. But when you say that the map is constitutional, that is a part of the rub for a lot of people, that, okay, well, it may be constitutional, but there was a mid-decade restructuring of the map, even if it was constitutional at the time, to put Democrats with a supermajority in our state.
No, in Illinois, there hasn't been a decade redistricting process. The last one would have been at the beginning of the decade, and then we started seeing what's happening in other states where they started changing the process and trying to redistrict midterm. And that we always have followed what happened with the census process.
Are you still there? I see it kind of pausing.
Oh, no, I'm still here.
Okay. Wanted to make sure you were still there. I want to continue our conversation. So when people look at what has taken place in our state and the supermajority that we have, they would look to other states and say, well, why can't they redraw it as well? I mean, obviously it's hung up in Virginia right now. The voters spoke. They said they wanted redistricting to happen. As opposed to California, where the voters spoke and okay, it's said and done. The high court in Virginia held it up and said, actually, this is not okay. So it's, even though the people had a say, the court is stepping in as a check. What are your thoughts on that system of checks and balances, then maybe holding up some of the democratic efforts in certain states?
Well, first of all, let me speak to the fact that the United States Supreme Court is supposed to be a check. We're supposed to have 3 co-equal, independent branches of government. And instead of seeing our Supreme Court right now being a check on this president, we are seeing this Supreme Court rubber stamp his authoritarian agenda. And I've already said that when I get to Washington, D.C., I am going to be a check on this president and look at what we can do. And there are a lot of options on the table to make sure that this Supreme Court is doing what it's supposed to do, whether we have to look at the option of potential term limits, whether we have to look at the potential of expanding the court. But what we cannot have is a court that is not serving as a check and as an independent branch of government to hold this president accountable. We're not seeing that happen. And so we're going to need real leaders in Washington who can make sure that we take the necessary action to make sure that we bring those checks and balances like are needed, because that's not what we're seeing right now.
And of course, this president will not be in office for the entirety of that time. But I do want to ask you, you are fighting to get to Washington, D.C. Your message is strong. What do you say to people, especially coming off of this past weekend with another attempt on President Trump's life? What do you say to people who say the verbiage has to be, the tone has to be taken down, the verbiage has to change from politicians in Washington?
Well, first of all, I've always spoken out against all forms of political violence. It is unacceptable and can never be normalized. At the very same time, I think about what is happening now, and going back to the topic of the Voting Rights Act and what's happening to strip away voting rights. We need people to call it out for what it is. We do not have a normal president right now. And we have a president who is trying to strip away voting rights, strip away the rights of the people, and particularly the Black community, and dilute the Black community's political power. And we need to make sure that we have people who are firm, who are willing to stand up and hold this president accountable. And that is something that should be expected. That's what the voters of Illinois are expecting. That's what Americans all across this country are expecting. Not that we just sit down and let this president get away with the chaos that he is instilling in all of our communities. And one of the ways that we do that is by making sure that there's access to the ballot box. And this president is trying to take that away.
What have you learned from the states, the other states that have had redistricting? What has the conversation been like as you are pushing for change moving forward? What has the conversation been like about those particular areas, those particular politicians that have essentially been the map that drawn out of the district that they, maybe have been a sure bet in before?
Well, I think first and foremost, what I'm learning and hearing and seeing, and I believe voters are too, is that Democrats are ready to fight back. That we're not going to just sit on the sidelines and watch our rights and our democracy be eroded day after day. We're ready to fight back, and we are standing up and speaking out, and we are doing that. And then one of the things that I want to see happen, of course, is not just looking at what we see state to state, but it's why when I get to the Senate, I want to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and make sure that we can protect access to the ballot. I mean, we've done a lot of work here in Illinois. Governor Pritzker and I have expanded access to the ballot. We've made Election Day a holiday so that people can have time to get to a state holiday so that they could get out and vote. We are thinking about ways to make sure people can have access to the ballot. And what we're seeing at the federal level is they're trying to take us backwards. And I tell you, once the Democrats take back the Senate, then I want to abolish the filibuster so that we can get that done, get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed and signed into law, because look at how much progress has been blocked because of the filibuster.
Well, when you say partisan, or when you are speaking about going back, when you're speaking about being taken back, obviously a lot of things can come to mind. Do you think that these efforts that are happening right now in terms of the Voting Rights Act, are they partisan or are they specifically about race?
Well, let's first of all look at what's happening. It has an impact on both. These are Republicans and their power grab, and it's disproportionately taking away Black voting rights, something that was fought for decades. And I think about, as I shared the story of my father who marched from Selma to Montgomery, he said he did so because he did not like how human beings were being treated. And he said it was up to him and so many others who marched, not just Dr. Martin Luther King, not just the late John Lewis, but so many civil rights leaders who got up and marched day after day, but also everyday people who said, I don't like how human beings are being treated either, and I'm going to stand up and be counted. And to see this effort led by Republicans to take away voting rights, this is an effort to take us back. It is an effort to try to make sure that our voices are not heard in the halls of power where policy is being made all across this country to better all of our communities. So I'm not going to stand for it. People are not going to stand for it. Democrats are going to fight back, and we're going to make sure that we do whatever we can to make sure that access to the ballot box and voting rights are protected. We're not going to just sit on the sidelines and let this happen without a fight.
Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. We'll be right back, everyone. everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us for another day of Chicago Live. We always appreciate having you here. I never know where we're going the next day, but we certainly hope that you'll be
out a lane. I gotta say, he has carved out a lane. We will see if it works, but he's down.
I mean, the one thing that the problem he has is Trump is not the person he's going to be running against, but this does raise his profile nationally.
We will see tomorrow.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Here's what's standing out today at 4. The NFL wants action from the Bears.